Hello friends, this is Dr. Jayesh and in this video we will be looking into the interpretation of real-time PCR curve shapes. We are going to look at what sort of information we can get from the shape of the amplification curves. These explanations are valid for both probe-based assays as well as binding dice-based assays in real-time PCR assays. The interpretations can provide a remarkable degree of insight into what might be happening in the reaction well. So, first of all, let us start with the first type of curve or the normal curve in real-time PCR assays. The curve is derived from the imaginary data for explanation purpose. So here in this curve you can see this is a sigmoidal shaped curve. As generally plotted, this sigmoidal shape with what we refer to as three visually distinct apparent phases or regions can be seen. The first phase, up to about cycle 15 or so, is near the baseline with a slow upward trend in the line. The second phase is a strong upward swing in the line between roughly cycle number 15 to cycle number 30 of our imaginary data. Finally, the third phase from about cycle number 30 onwards is a plateau phase where the amplification signal tapers off and ceases to grow. Now in this curve, there are two important points which are particularly important. One is the CT value, although the exact definition of this depends upon the instrument software algorithm. This is basically the point where the curve first clearly rises off baseline to a statistically significant degree. And depending upon your instrument and software what you are using, it can be referred as CQ value, or that is cycle quantification value, or crossing point, that is CP value, or takeoff point, that is stop. The crossing of statistical noise threshold is the basis for calling a sample positive in a qualitative assay, and the number of cycles at which it occurs is the basis of generation of a standard curve and quantitation of a starting template in a quantitative PCR assay. The second point, not particularly of interest in the daily clinical lab but of relevance here, is a point midway of the apparent second phase of the curve, where there is an imperceptible change from the curve increasing in slope each cycle to decreasing in slope each cycle, or what a mathematician could refer to as an inflection point. Now, it is to be noted that what amplification curve we have presented here uh, in this video is not a actual curve and not a raw data curve, but it has been processed through the instrument software to apply fluorophore specific channel filters or compensation and to remove background noise, and possibly subjected to smoothing the algorithms. Vertical axes are most commonly not total fluorescence but per cycle changes in the fluorescence. In fact, if we can look at pure raw fluorescence versus cycle data, the data won't look very much like our nice sigmoidal curve. The various processes done on the raw data to make our traditional curve helps it make more readily interpretable, but needs to be borne in the mind, as in some cases it can lead to erroneous conclusions. So again, this is a second diagram where you can see how the data is processed through the instrument algorithm software and algorithm. So here we have shown this ABCD curve where the vertical axis shows the fluorescence whereas the horizontal axis shows the cycle number. So if we see the A diagram number A, it shows the raw data or the source data which undergoes smoothing in the B, and the baseline subtraction in the C diagram. and finally giving us our final input of the sigmoidal curve, as we can see in the D. So here we can see the raw data has undergone smoothing in B, the baseline subtraction in C, and finally amplitude normalization in D to give us our exact sigmoidal shaped curve. With all this in mind, let us think about the causes of process curve. I have the characteristic shape. The first apparent phase, or the little or no signal primary, arises due to limit of instrument sensitivity. Even in hypothetical perfect PCR reactions with perfect two-fold amplification per cycle, starting from a single template copy, the instrument just can't see the fluorescent signal from the amplification until it reaches a certain level. This doesn't mean there isn't background fluorescent signal being detected. In these early cycles there is, and it fluctuates around, but the true product signal is insignificantly small component of this signal. This background noise is actually useful in many instruments. Measurement of this is used to set the CT threshold as some statistical relevant increase out of the noise range. That is why any signal far enough above the least level of signal is taken as coming from amplicon. We therefore expect this early cycle phase to be essentially flat in our amplification curve, and in some system we apply the expectation as a tool. Any small drift trend in the background noise is assumed to be due to changes in the fluorophores themselves, such as decay of reporters or quenching due to thermal cycling. Background subtraction algorithms generally act to ensure this early phase of the amplification curve thus looks flat. Some even go so far as to actually correct for any trends in signal detected in this stage, adding or subtracting this amount to flatten the early curve region. The second apparent phase occurs when the amplicon-derived fluorescent signal actually gets strong enough to be reliably detected by the instrument. At some early point of this, the CT value is crossed. Our assay scores positive and we get a cycle, that is CT number, useful for quantitation if desired. This PCR process is a two-fold per cycle, that is exponential growth, and the detection of this lead to a strong straight curve growth phase in most common amplification plot forms. Utilization of limited resources such as the primers, nucleotide, and even enzymes activity available in the reaction vessels eventually starts to limit the growth. The PCR can no be longer to its theoretical maximum resource uh, unlimited efficiency. This point where resources limitation first takes hold slowly is our inflection point noted above. As the resource limitation becomes progressively more severe, the amplification curve tails off and finally plateaus in our third phase, effectively resource exhausted and unable to grow further. So this was about the three phases of the sigmoidal curve. Now what more information can be obtained from this curve? A PCR amplification curve which looks like sigmoidal curve is generally a sign of healthy good PCR reaction. As a direct measure of that, we can actually go in and measure the slope of our curve during the early, that is pre-inflection point of the second phase curve. Depending on the exact number of curve axes, different math is performed, where a perfectly efficient PVR has n is equal to 2. N is the number of cycles, or the doubling in each cycle. Real-world good assays generally fall in a category where the N value is more than 1.9. Many software packages can directly provide the user with N for a given PCR assay. either of a single curve or a standard dilution curve. The second information what we can get from the healthy amplification curve is the CT value, as we had already discussed, or in effect how late in cycling the phase 2 region start. The most important point to be noted here as there is no correlation between the fluorescence value in the phase 3 plateau area and starting template concentration. Now, while knowing the exact slope number is useful, that is, if you find that if it is less than 1.6, your assay needs an optimization of conditions. But even by eyesight or by looking with the naked eye and comparing with the curve shape, it is useful to see whether the slope falls in the optimum range. Now let us see the second curve. If your curve has a weak or low slope or even indistinguishable phase 2, something is not right. If this is a general observation of your assay on clean standard materials, then a first thing to consider would be the Tm value of the cycling. Tm value is the melting temperature of the cycle. So if this is too high, your amplifying primers can't bind down on their priming site as effectively as possible, reducing your maximal per cycle efficiency and leading to a slow phase 2 area. If this is a on-off observation on a single sample and your control material shows a strong phase 2 by comparison, then it is more likely to have an instance of sample-specific PCR inhibition at a level high enough to interfere with the efficiency, meaning any quantitation data you try to interpret from the CT on that sample is probably wrong, with a later CT than expected, but obviously not at a high level enough to yield a completely negative result. Now, a similar type of curve can occur as well for a very different reason. If your PCR primers have a very poor specificity, possibly to due to low melting temperature, allowing them to bind indiscriminately, then it can be possible to simultaneously have many different random amplicons of varying efficiencies all being made at once in the reactions. This competition between the reactions and their individually hitting different reaction phases at different times lead to the curve what we have seen in the second figure, as they are aggregate fluorescence signals drawn out distinct phase 2 and phase 3 regions. Again, an important point to be noted that this would be a potential observation in binding dye-based assays rather than probe-based assays, which are not specific in signaling only signal from desired target sequences. This is one of the significant reasons for preference of probe-based assays over binding dye-based assays, as this type of error is effectively swept under the carpet. In some unfortunate cases, though, side products may have enough sequence homology to probe to give rise to signal. This sort of observation can occur, albeit but less frequently, in probe-based assays. Thus, regardless of the methodology, the validity of interpreting an amplification curve with a feeble phase 2 region should be eyed with some suspicion. Now we'll see the third type of curve. Now if we see this curve, this looks bizarre, but it is not an infrequent observation to get this type of curve in real-time PCR assays. While this curve ends up below the CT threshold and one might be tempted to call the reaction negative, in fact the exact opposite is true. The curve is arising due to an extremely high starting target template concentration. So we can see that what we have seen in for interpretation of first curve, the first phase region is appeared to flat, but by adding or subtracting any curve trend detected in early cycle on the assumption these arises from background changes to fluorophores and all early cycle signal is noise. If instead this reaction starts with such a high template load as to already have detectable real signal in this early cycle, then these background correction algorithms now are removing real target derived signal. The subtraction of the real signal has the graphical result of effectively rotating the amplification curve about the axis origin. Phase 1, which should be slope upward, now looks flat or even slightly decreasing. Phase 2 appears, but since its actual rate of growth is underreported, it looks weak and may in some cases fail to cross the CT value. And finally, the phase 3, where an actual plateau occurs, now looks like a negative slope since no growth minus or growing background yields a negative value. While the amplification curve is nearly definitive, if the instrument software being used sets reaction-specific CT values, a second hint that this is occurring is while the CT value threshold is very high compared to controls or other well-behaved samples. That is, the background signals are much higher than normal. Fortunately, if this readily distinguishable curve shape is observed, proving the root cause is readily done by repeating the test or on a greatly diluted sample where a 1 is to 10,000 dilutions will be reasonable. Alternatively, some software packages allow the users to go in and manually switch off the background reaction. Doing so in this case immediately provide a true amplification curve. But the thing to note is here that for actual CT values, dilutions is required and retesting needs to be done. But for a purely qualitative assay, disabling the background reactions may be sufficient for appropriate result calling. So friends, here we have seen the three types of curve that can occur more frequently in real-time PCR assays. What we have seen here constitute a very small subset of things real-time PCR amplification curve can tell us. There are many more interpretative graphs and curves what we can come across while interpreting a real-time PCR assays. They are less frequently occurrence but are essential for interpretation of a real-time review is been informative for all the listeners of this video and it finds user for very useful for the interpretation of the real-time PCR curve and analysis of the data what we get out of real-time PCR assay. So friends, we- once again, I thank you all for supporting the videos and listening to these lectures. I will come up with more informative videos with respect to the real-time PCR assays and molecular testing technology in the laboratory. Thank you all.